say whatever they want about me. You start targeting people that know me, and I'm going to come in there with a flamethrower, and I'm going to torch you. And so that is what I've been doing for the last few days. Stay away from my kids, stay away from my church.
He writes, the effort challenges a decade of established legal rights for same-sex couples, rights that continue to enjoy broad public support. Oh, well, let's not get, all of human history and natural law. Let's not let that get in the way of a decade of established legal rights. Like, what a load of bunk.
This tapestry of human experience going back, either if you want to go down the Adam and Eve route or the evolutionary biology route, okay, this is as pre as it comes as it relates to human established bonds.
Yeah.
But your 10 years of what 5 Supreme Court justices mandated for the country, that's what's established in your mind? Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I don't think so.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kylee Cast. I'm Kylee Griswold, managing editor at The Federalist. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. It's one of the easiest and best ways you can help out the show, so why wouldn't you do it? And if you're just listening to the show, go check out the full video version on my personal YouTube channel or the Federalist channel on Rumble. And then, of course, like and subscribe there, too. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at radio@thefederalist.com. We always love to hear from you. Today, I am so happy to be joined once again by Katy Faust of Them Before Us. You are familiar with her. If you have not already heard the episode from the Federalist Radio Hour or a Kylee Cast episode with her, go back and listen to that as soon as you're done with this episode because there's such great stuff about her background and the work that she is doing. But Katy, welcome back to the Kylee Cast.
We are very glad to be here with you, we being the magisterial Katy and team, who is very thankful that the right has developed its own sources of accessing the public so that we do not have to bow and scrape and beg for fair representation in the legacy media. And when they pull one of the stunts like what they did over the weekend, where they create this hit piece that kind of posed as journalism, we don't just have to sit there and take it and hope that people are going to be exposed to the arguments. Outlets like the Federalist means I can get my case to the public, and we can actually use this as a means of exposing the audience to the real issues that huge outlets like the Seattle Times want to avoid.
That's right. That's right. So the reason we're having you back so soon, Katy, is that you are now in your own vicious news cycle, thanks to the Seattle Times, coming out with a hit piece on you on Mother's Day of all days. And it's front page, your face, your name, personal details about your life, but not any of the things that actually matter about the work that you're doing, of course. So why don't we get into just the specifics of the Seattle Times piece? Can you just walk listeners through who maybe haven't read the piece in its entirety, what exactly the Seattle Times did in its hit piece on you?
Well, it was 2,000 words about every single thing that people in Seattle need to know about public offender number 1. And what is my great offense? I think children need a mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
And marriage policy has been one of the most effective ways to secure those relationships for kids, not just within Christendom, but in the 5 major religions of the world and nearly every society throughout history. So I've got these wacky views that children should be known and loved by the 2 people responsible for their existence and that they shouldn't be bought and sold. And I've made this dangerous case that's also the accurate case that gay marriage actually threatens both of those critical child needs, to be known and loved by their mother and father and to be born free and not bought and sold. This is not a case that is baseless. It's a case with 11 years of receipts now. But the journalist, Jim Brunner at the Seattle Times, didn't bother to expose his readers to that case. Instead, he told them the neighborhood where I live, the church where I attend, my husband's former and current employer. We don't talk a whole lot about my husband's job because he's transitioned to being an active duty Navy chaplain, but he decided to share that, with the world anyway. He even reached out to my husband for a comment when he was floating out during his deployment to see whether or not he had thoughts on his wife running a, hateful campaign. My husband didn't have time to get back to him because he's up at 5. He goes to bed at 9:30 or 10, 7 days a week. And I just wonder if Mr. Brunner, had he replied. If Mr. Bruno would have said, hey, thanks for leaving your family. Thanks for being, away from them for the majority of the last 2 years, securing my right, my First Amendment right, that I am going to use to dox your wife's public
Right.
location so that she has to have increased security at her events now. And
Right.
it was such a beta male move that
Yes.
whole profile was just personal details, how much money my nonprofit made, little salacious bites of articles and interviews, but never linking to any of my core interviews or my core speeches that would
Mhm.
explain it to people. So anyway, it was quite frankly dog whistle. Like it is a dog whistle in the classic sense. Like, hey boys, look here, go get her. That's really what this hit piece was.
Yep. And not that you would have responded anyway, but did this so-called reporter ever try to reach you for comment or just your husband?
Oh, he reached everybody. He contacted former employees at my nonprofit, current employees. My board chair. He did finally email to me. He called me. I mean, I'm like, I'm not going to call him back. He doesn't need my phone number. He
Mhm.
emailed me. He said, I've been trying to reach you. I'm doing. And I wrote back and I said, no, thank you, because we know him not to be an honest player.
Mhm.
My board chair has been in the nonprofit world here in Washington for the last 30 years. And he goes, it doesn't matter what you say. He will distort whatever you say. So see what he writes. And when he gets it wrong, we will expose him. So that was
Mhm.
the tactic that we went with.
Right, and of course, he was not interested in telling your side of the story at all anyway, which one of the most telling things, as you mentioned, was that not only did he not even just give a brief synopsis of your work, what you do, what you stand for, children have a right to their mother and father, very basic, would have taken only a couple more words, but he did not even link to any of your arguments, articles, podcast interviews. He mentioned them. He quoted the tiniest little snippets you could ever find to paint you in the worst possible light, although they didn't. I mean, these are like very, very universal truths, even that he quoted, but still, not even linking to your NatCon speech. I mean, truly an egregious example of journalistic malpractice on every level. I loved how you wrote. So you wrote a piece for us in the Federalist. Everybody should go read the entire piece because it's excellent. I somehow closed my tab here, but it's like in its hit piece on me, the Seattle Times proved I'm right about Obergefell. Excellent, excellent piece, so compelling. But you wrote in the piece that he had to engage with the dissenter because he can't engage with the dissent. He can't actually argue. And the dissent, of course, being that Obergefell has indeed victimized children. So you detail in your piece at the Federalist a number of the gross rhetorical tactics, some of which you've already mentioned, but maybe just walk us through some more of these, because one of them that you haven't mentioned yet was fudging the poll numbers. Can you just explain like how he's totally playing both sides here to show that Obergefell has broad support even though he's ignoring other poll numbers that say that it doesn't. Can you just walk us through that?
Poor man couldn't make up his mind. I mean, through
Truly.
that whole story, he's like the grave threat to gay marriage, but also everybody loves gay marriage. It's totally
Right.
accepted. We have 10 big fat years of precedent. And look at the high approval rate, even among Republicans. And he stated that, at the top. And if you had clicked on the link for that, it actually shows that support for gay marriage among Republicans as of a year ago was down to 41%. That's a drop of
Mhm.
16% just in 2 years. I mean, it is like a meteor drop. Okay, like it has been such a rapid decline. And then later on, when he actually wanted to cite a specific number for Republican support, he went with a much lesser known uh, statistic that put it at about 56% instead. And so it's like he wanted to say there's so much support for this, but then later, like he quotes voices that are like, nothing's secure, anything could happen. They did this with Roe, all of these different like, is she a major threat or is there no threat at all? And he did that
Yes.
throughout the piece, like he would say, and she's had increased funding. She had like under $50,000 worth of income, for the first couple of years of her nonprofit. But last year they raised $1 million. Like, have you been in the nonprofit world? Like, that's actually not a whole lot of money. But by the way, I will say on $1 million budget, our 6 employees and probably 9 contractors absolutely do as much as their lambda legal quote, the people, the voices they pulled in from Lambda Legal, right? Where they didn't care to expose their publicly reported numbers, which their
Right.
CEO makes $800,000. They pulled in 56 million last year. They've got a $250 million capital campaign there in the middle.
Right.
But transparency, people, transparency. Make sure that you report on the salary and the $1 million income of the little nonprofit, that you say is such a
Right.
big threat. So it's like just both sides of his mouth. And it just proved like the whole point was not clarity for your readers. The point is, let me create a backdrop so that I can just litter this with personal identifying details
Hmm.
so that you can harass her church, her friends, find her children. I mean, in the local online forums, that is all the conversation that's happening. Where does she go to the gym? Where do her kids go to school? How do we find them? How do we organize to target the event where she is going to be speaking this Saturday night? That was the point. The point was personal intimidation, not reporting.
Hmm. Right. Well, and we don't need to tell our listeners how effective this is and how dangerous it is to do this to figures on the right. For all of the left's talk of stochastic terrorism and dog whistling and all of these other things, I mean, that is exactly what this is. This is like assassination prep-esque. It's
Mhm.
what they do constantly. They deploy it against their enemies. And as you write in the piece, ask Donald Trump about what kind of a threat this is. Ask Erica Kirk. Like, this is no small thing. This isn't just a petty, vindictive piece. Hit piece journalism, that's been going on for a very long time. It's not unique to write something nasty, about your enemies, no matter how much it lacks journalistic integrity or what sorry excuse of reporting it is. But this is about sicking people who are violent, who are desperate on the people who disagree with them. And that's the entire point of this. And that's why it's so dangerous.
I sent the article. My kids didn't know that it came out for a couple days, and then they would hear me saying, blah blah blah, Seattle Times, blah blah blah, Seattle Times, kind of like in the other room on my phone. They're like, "What's going on with the Seattle Times?" Like, they wrote a little thing. It's fine, and they're like, "Send it to me. I want to read it." And so I sent it to my 16-year-old son, and I hear him in the room, and he gets like within minutes, just a few seconds of reading, he starts laughing, and I'm like, "Okay, what's so funny?" He goes, "Oh, like I get one paragraph in and I get a pop up that says, sign up for inclusive news reporting." And I'm like, that's your pop up, Seattle Times. Like, it is so obvious who your base is. And you should know, your own readers. You know that based on recent repeated polling, that
Yes.
people that identify as very liberal, 25% of them think that political violence is justified if it achieves their political ends.
Right.
I'll tell you what, very liberal is definitely characteristic of the vast majority of the Seattle Times readers. And so they knew exactly what they were doing. They did it on purpose, right? They created a piece that did not examine the argument. They created a piece that just honeycombed with personal identifying information for an audience that lives very close to where I live. And
Hmm.
they did it because the whole purpose is to intimidate me into silence.
Right, right. Yeah, 1 in 4 Seattle Times readers is thinks it's okay to be violent against your political opponents. So, um, let's talk a little bit about the science that Brunner includes in his piece as well, because I know Them Before Us has nuked these studies from orbit. Can you just walk us through? I think he cites the UCLA study about like, oh no, everything is all hunky dory with children of same sex couples. That there's nothing showing any harms to these kids. Can you just kind of briefly walk us through why that is complete bunk?
Yeah, well, what he did is, this is very, very common, like 94 studies say, and it's meant to create this impression that there is uniformity, right, among sociologists. So, what did those 94 studies actually say? Well, some of them were these sort of junk science measurements about children with same sex parents. Some of it, a lot of it, was just measuring the impact or how adults perceive their status in society or the benefits that they receive as a result of having gay marriage legalized. It really did not take an in depth look at the well being of children raised by same sex parents in any way that is statistically applicable to the broader public.
Mm,
So he pulled in something from a left leaning source that said, hey, gay marriage has been overall a net positive for adults. when you actually dig into the numbers about kids, first of all, he did not look at anything that had to do with the redefinition of parentage on
Mm,
children, which is the real issue with gay marriage. The real issue, as we can address, and that I talked about in detail in the Federalist piece, is that redefining marriage redefined parenthood. Gay marriage requires detaching children from their biological parents and reattaching them to biological strangers without any background checks. It is an absolute reorientation of the universe of marriage and parenthood law. So that he wasn't looking at any of that. And the studies that he lumped in about children that fare just as well as kids raised by heterosexual parents suffer from such serious methodological flaws that we see that all of those studies that did not use random samples, they
mm,
found favorable outcomes for kids. But any study that did use random samples found diminished outcomes for kids. I mean,
mm,
that really is all that you need to know about
right.
the reliability of these studies. And most of these studies are not actually examining how did the kids fare in school? Do they have IEPs? Did they suffer any kind of sexual abuse? Were they on welfare? Did they have, what was their emotional status like? Did they end up getting involved in criminal activity later? Most of the surveys that show that the kids fare no different simply went to the parents and said, hey, do your kids like having gay parents? They do? Oh, looks like they fare no different. So this
Right.
is what, the left does on any of their kind of popular causes. They will create this veneer of social consensus using weak or non-existent data, and they'll create this consensus that says, hey, looks like there's no harm. That's what he did. He pulled from one of those surveys of all this data, where if you
Hmm.
crack under the surface, the data doesn't say what it says, and the actual data says the opposite. So we did put a link in our Federalist piece. If you really want to understand the science, the real science that we know behind same-sex parenting studies, we examined all of them. We
Hmm.
broke it down for you. I think that you should actually know how to respond to this question because it's such a common objection that runs directly counter to the actual outcomes of kids.
Yep, yep. Well, just like they did that with the studies, they also do it with the poll numbers, like we already talked about. But that's the entire rhetorical gambit here, is just creating a narrative. It's not about what the actual science or research says. It's not about what natural law says. It's all about just kind of the aura of this. It's like a pseudo what am I trying to say? Like the facade that this is all good. And I laughed at this paragraph from the opening of the Seattle Times piece. He writes, the effort challenges a decade of established legal rights for same sex couples, rights that continue to enjoy broad public support. Oh, well, let's not get, all of human history and natural law. Let's not let that get in the way of a decade of established legal rights. And then, using fake poll numbers to pretend that this still enjoys broad public support. Like, what a load of bunk. I mean, this is just a complete facade. They're clearly grasping at straws here.
I, as always is the case when there's sort of a local flare up, I've spent a lot of time in the last few days responding to local online forums where they are targeting. I mean, people can say whatever they want about me. You start targeting people that know me, and I'm going to come in there with a flamethrower and I'm going to
Yep.
torch you. And so that is what I've been doing for the last few days is just like, get the F away from my friends.
Right.
Excuse me. But that's kind of where it's been like, stay away from my kids, stay away from my church. And it's just amazing to me because someone's like, well, you're a hateful monster. I'm like, oh, hateful monster for saying that children have a natural pre-political claim to their own parents and vice versa. And that is testified to by not just natural law, but the best social science that we have, judicial precedent, and 400 years of common law, like pre-colonial times. We have this established judicial understanding that the natural parent-child relationship is something that is recognized, not assigned. And he wrote back and he's like, you sound like a hateful bigot to me. And I'm like, you got hateful bigot out of that? I just
Hmm.
came at you with 4 different sources of authority, none of which are religious. But
Right.
you simply cannot comprehend that all of this tapestry of human experience going back, like, either like if you want to go down the Adam and Eve route or the evolutionary biology route, okay, like this is as pre as it comes as it relates to human established bonds.
Yes.
uh, but your 10 years of what 5 Supreme Court justices mandated for the country, that's what's established in your mind. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Right, right. Yeah, so on that same note, I wanted to circle back to the parentage question because Brunner was not going to represent this argument in his piece, so I want to let you have plenty of time to do it here. Just to explain more how Obergefell, how redefining marriage, which does have a real definition that's rooted in natural law, how redefining that does also redefine parentage. And then specifically also you detail some of this in your Federalist piece, but how parentage laws have then flowed out of that.
Yep, exactly. This is the whole argument. This is the whole
Mhm.
argument. And I will say, unfortunately, it's an argument that conservatives arguing for traditional marriage 11 years ago did not make strong enough. And
Mhm.
it is the area that deserves our focus today because the real victims are children, not just the children who are made intentionally motherless and fatherless. It has implications for every parent-child relationship. So let me explain. If you're going to elevate same-sex couples to the status of opposite sex couples, and that is what Obergefell requires. Obergefell says any distinction between same-sex and opposite sex couples is unconstitutional discrimination. They have to be treated exactly the same. In Obergefell, in Kennedy's words, they have to have the full constellation of benefits.
Right.
Now, a huge benefit of marriage is the presumption of parentage. The whole reason government has an interest in marriage is because it has an interest in children. That's not my
Mhm.
words. That is DOMA, 1996, passed by a bipartisan Congress and signed by Bill Clinton. Government's interest in marriage is children. So
Mhm.
when you redefine marriage, you redefine parenthood 100% of the time. 38 countries around the world have legalized gay marriage, and zero of them have reinforced children's right to their mother and father. All of them have eliminated or undermined this fundamental natural relationship that children have with their own mom and dad. So, what happens when you say same sex and opposite sex couples need to be treated exactly the same in law? That means same sex couples need to have equal access to children that heterosexual couples do. Now, you can see the problem here.
Mhm.
Same sex couples don't make babies.
Right.
So they have to have pathways to acquire other people's children easily and sometimes subsidized by tax dollars or
Mhm.
insurance benefits. And so what we've
Right,
seen,
because they're infertile, Katie. Because they're
right,
infertile because they can't have children naturally.
so that actually is one demonstrable, measurable evidence of redefining marriage. We have seen several jurisdictions redefine infertility. So
Mhm.
now it's
Right.
not 6 to 12 months of unprotected heterosexual sex that doesn't result in a pregnancy or live birth. Now, single people, same sex couples, thruples can be infertile because if they cannot have subsidized access to IVF and donors and surrogacy, that constitutes discrimination. So, do you see what happened here? We have made children unequal in the name of adult equality, and
Mhm.
all of parenthood has shifted. Now, the interesting thing about this is one of the first states to make this Washington, my state. In 2018, Jamie Peterson, who is a Democrat darling, father of four surrogate born children, gay married, he was one of the authors that rewrote the Uniform Parentage Act. This is one of the ways that states will define who gets to be a parent. And he literally said during the committee hearings that they had to update the Uniform Parentage Act because it would be considered discriminatory after Obergefell if they did not scrub the words mother and father from parentage, if they
Mhm.
did not create new pathways for adults to acquire children without background checks, if they did not codify the purchasing of children, the exchange of money from intended parents to birth parents or genetic parents. Now, as the former assistant director of the largest Chinese adoption agency in the world, paying birth parents or genetic parents to relinquish their parental rights is a form of trafficking.
Mhm.
But that's exactly what we did in 2018 when Peterson's bill passed Washington state. It was state sanctioned trafficking. And now about 11 states have passed that updated UPA that functionally means that children have to be assigned a stranger by the government. That's really what
Mhm.
it is, right? We're not recognizing parentage, we are assigning it in the name of adult equality. So when I say that Obergefell commodifies children, Exhibit A happened right here in Washington state. And reporter Jim Brunner just didn't seem to feel like that was relevant enough to share with his readers.
Yeah, it's clearly irrelevant, Katie. Has nothing to do with the conversation at hand. Jamie Peterson, by the way, who purchased 4 of his own children via surrogate. So, of course, this issue is very near and dear to his heart. Um, I know you filed an amicus brief, or you plus a group of people in Obergefell, so over a decade ago. Are these the same arguments you made in that amicus brief, or was there more to it than this?
There were 5 kids with LGBT parents who filed briefs. I'm sorry, 6 of us, me and 5 others, that filed briefs
Okay.
in support of traditional marriage.
Mhm.
I co-authored a brief with a woman named Heather Barwick. The other 4 authored briefs with different focuses, but Heather and I specifically focused on the voices of children with same-sex parents.
Mm.
What did we probably shared 30 stories of kids with same-sex parents, which, can I just say, those stories are hard to find. A, because a lot of them aren't old enough to speak for themselves. B, the political pressure to affirm their parents' relationship
Mhm.
status is so strong. And C, there's huge, huge backlash if they choose to speak out. Any kid that defies that political love makes a family narrative will be crushed. I mean, I know, because they pretty much have to resign themselves to having no connection to any of their family of origin if they were to dissent from their
Mhm.
upbringing.
Mhm.
So we found 30 voices of kids that we included in that brief. And we said, we want you to look at the impact of legalizing gay marriage. You are going to not regard mother and father loss as a tragedy. I want you to read the stories of kids with identity struggles, who had mother hunger or
Right.
father hunger, who struggled with their own gender or sexual identity because they didn't have a male or a female parent, the one who was subjected to increased risk of abuse and neglect, which always goes along with having more unrelated adults in your home. Look at them and say, this is something that we should codify, endorse, and promote. So, yes, our entire brief was just about the loss that children were going to experience if we legalized gay marriage. But instead, the justices said, no, kids need this, right? They need their families to have the same dignity, right? They need the stability that comes from this. Very, very interestingly, since Obergefell, Dr. Paul Sullins re-examined some data from one of the flagship studies that supposedly showed no difference between kids raised by opposite sex and same-sex parents. And he found that that original Wainwright and Patterson study misidentified some of the kids. So when he properly contextualized the kids who were raised by heterosexual versus homosexual couples, he found that this one data set showed that children, big surprise, children fared worse with same sex parents, but he also was able to parse out the difference between cohabiting same sex parents and married same sex parents. And the children of married same sex parents had much higher rates of daily fearfulness and crying and emotional problems. So marriage
Wow.
did not solve their problem, it
Mhm.
compounded it. Something
Right.
about locking children in to that relationship that will always exclude their mother or father, it compounded their emotional struggles.
Mhm, mhm. Well, and I mean, of course, we're talking about this in the context of same-sex relationships here, but this is the lie that we hear about all forms of, marriage that are not, or, like, they use the same arguments for divorce. If the adults are happy, the kids will be happy, and that's just not true, and it's a lie we tell ourselves to soothe our adult desires and to use as a license to live however we want, but it's just a lie, and it applies as strongly to same-sex marriage as it does to divorce and other forms of um, unions and relationships that are not part of the natural order. It's just a complete lie. And also, I mean, I your point is well taken, Katie, about just being difficult to find people who are willing to talk about this because of relationship breakdown. But even you yourself are an example. I think people who support same-sex marriage would love nothing more than for the masses to believe that it's impossible to speak what is true and have a relationship with someone who disagrees with you or who does favor same-sex relationships. My husband and I have relationships with people who are same-sex married, and we are able to have a good functioning relationship with them, even though they know we disagree with them. We know they disagree with us. You, of course, have this even in your own family, and you have a good relationship with your mom. And so, I do think it's worth worth saying that not to believe that lie either, that like it's impossible to say what is true and still be able to maintain a faithful witness, have good close relationships, love people in your life who disagree, even if you think they're completely wrong on this issue.
Yeah.
Just something worth noting.
I
Um,
totally want to jump in and say that's 100% correct. The reason we are where we are today with gay marriage is because the other side so successfully framed this as if you actually love your gay family and friends, you will support gay marriage. There's
yes,
no
you will
other
affirm it.
way. Yeah, if you don't support gay marriage, that means you hate your gay family and friends.
Right.
And the truth is, that worked for conservatives because we actually do love our gay family and friends. We would
Right.
like to sacrifice for them, serve them, keep them in our lives. We won't bend our convictions for them, but in any way that our lives can bend for them, we do. And I'm
Hmm.
saying that not just as somebody who is working to live that way, but I know a few too many hardcore, like Christian conservatives who are also doing the same thing. So, a big part of the campaign, the Greater Than campaign, is we are going to change the way people think about gay marriage. This is not a litmus test of whether or not you think gay people have dignity. They
Right.
obviously do. This is not a
Right.
way to say, I love my gay family and friends. Marriage is about justice for children. The definition of marriage fundamentally has to do with the rights, well being, and protection of children. And unfortunately, due to the now almost every week case of children who are raised, especially by two men who are subjected to abuse or commercial mother loss, they're hitting our news feeds over and over and over. The real victims of marriage are going to be harder, of gay marriage are going to be harder to conceal. And sooner rather than later, Americans, the charitable ones that think this is the way to love my gay family and friends, are going to have to choose. Am I
Hmm.
going to continue to, in essence, appease that relationship? Or am I going to say child protection matters more than that?
Hmm. Absolutely. Katie and I talk a lot more about all of these themes in our previous episode of the Kylee Cast, so make sure you go check it out. We talk there not only about gay marriage, but about divorce, about IVF, about surrogacy. There's so much more there. Katie, we're just about out of time here, but before I let you go, I do just want to encourage Christians who are listening to this, because the hit piece in the Seattle Times is a great example of this. But I think you're absolutely right. You know that we need to make the parentage argument stronger. We need to make so many of these other arguments stronger and not less lovingly, but we need to identify where we have allowed lies to redefine what love even means for us, and to back away from the truth. And so I just want to encourage Christians, like, it's time to suit up. You need to put your armor on, because as we make these arguments more strongly, as we come out in fuller force and unapologetically fight for the rights of children, the opposition will become even more strong. The attacks will come, the violence will come, and so we need to be prepared. We need to be rooted and grounded in love, informed by Scripture, and like living in step with the Spirit, so that we are able and willing and ready to weather those attacks. And that means every day putting on the armor of God, you know, truth, salvation, peace, all of it, just girding up, or we are not going to be ready, and we will back down, and we really can't afford to.
Let me throw one more thing in there. If you are a parent and you choose to step into the war, you're going to be showing your kids a picture of something that they long for. And that is somebody that was forged to live in a specific time and in a specific place and bring their faith and their convictions into the public sphere, not because it's self serving, but because it is others sacrificing. We are
Mhm.
sacrificing for others. We're not here. We're not doing this to defend ourselves and make sure that our 501c3 status is secure. We
Right.
are doing this because the least of these are being victimized, because we are the demographic charged with defending the fatherless. And marriage redefinition, all these reproductive technologies manufacture the fatherless and the motherless. And it's like, I know all of us grew up like revering these stories of Corey Ten Boom and um Lord, what's the woman's name who is rescued the kids in India? Um,
Oh, yeah, what is her name? I
I
know who you're
reference her
talking about.
all the time. I'll think of it
Is
in
it
just, but
yeah.
like we look at all of these great Christian heroes who charged up against the culture, William Wilberforce, and they refused to bend and they took so much crap for it.
Yep.
They just, the whole, but we revere them as heroes. And your kids are looking around going, where are those people right now? And the answer is it needs to be you. They need to be able to look at you,
Mhm.
their mom and dad, who are refusing to bend, who, yeah, maybe they're losing some relationships. Maybe they're going against their HR department. But I will tell you, it's so inspiring for kids to say, I'm looking at somebody and they're in my own house and they're doing the thing that is hard. And when I read the Psalms, when I look at Psalm 18, when I look at Psalm 82, um, my dad looks like that. That's the
Mm.
kind of guy that my dad is.
Mhm.
Like, you want to talk about like Amy Carmichael.
Yes, my mind kept going Elizabeth Elliot, and I'm like, "That's not it. Who is it?" Yeah, okay.
Yeah, also totally based, but,
Yes.
um, like, that's it, like, this is an opportunity for you to step into the great cloud of witnesses,
Mhm.
of the Christians who have stood against culture for the sake of protecting the most vulnerable, and it's not necessarily happening these days on the question of, is Jesus fully God, fully man? It is happening on the question of what is the nature of man,
Yep.
and who makes life and who takes life? What is male? What is female? And therefore, what is marriage? And therefore, to whom do children have a natural right? And vice versa. Like,
Mhm.
all of these image of God questions are the place where you have to just go so hard and you have to fight against culture. And the incredible beauty of that is it's probably going to drive your own children's faith, rooting them to the ground in a
Mhm.
way that isn't when you play it safe or decide
Mhm.
that, my job is to love God, love people. And that means never telling the truth, never paying a price, never speaking up. Like, I just have seen the fortification in the life of my own children
Mhm.
because, you know, their father and I are living out a faith that costs us something.
Right. Right. Well, and someday you are not going to be around anymore. I'm not going to be around anymore, but our children and their children will be around. And we need the next generation to be even bolder than our generation. And so that's another reason why it's so important, not only to give them examples and to just, yeah, be good testimonies to them, but to prepare them to jump into the same fight, because there are replacements. Like they are the next generation that's going to need to fight these same exact fights. Maybe they'll look different. Maybe Obergefell will be overturned, but children are still going to need to be defended in one way or another, and we're going to need them as well. So
Okay.
Katy, thank you so much for joining me on the Kylee Cast. And everybody should go listen to our previous episode about IVF, surrogacy, Obergefell, all of the rest, and definitely go read Katy's piece on the Federalist today about this hit piece from the Seattle Times. You can read the real story there instead of the garbage journalism from James Brunner at the Seattle Times. So Katy, thanks again. We'll have you back soon.
Great. Thanks, Kylie.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Kylee Cast. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We have a channel specifically for the Kylee Cast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you're only subscribed to the Federalist Radio Hour or You're Wrong with Molly Hemingway and David Harsani, two of our other great Federalist podcasts, be sure you're subscribed to the Kylee Cast as well so you never miss an episode. Leave us a 5-star review. It is such an easy way for you to help out the show. And go read Katy Faust's piece at the Federalist today. It's called In its hit piece on me, the Seattle Times proves I'm right about Obergefell. Excellent piece. Don't even bother reading the Seattle Times hit piece. It's a complete garbage waste of time, but go read Katy's piece for sure. And go listen to our previous episode that we recorded about all things IVF, surrogacy, gay marriage, divorce, and the rest. As always, I will be back next week with more. So until then, just remember, the truth hurts, but it won't kill you.